I'm here with Scott Jordan, the founder of Scotty Vest, who famously pitched on Shark Tank. For those of you who weren't able to see the Shark Tank episode, we'll ask Scott to give his elevator pitch of what the pitch was and how he came up with the idea for Scotty Vest.
I'd love to do that. Thanks so much for having me on, Kevin. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So the elevator pitch for Scotty Vest is we take great looking casual wear clothing and we make it better by adding tons of pockets and features to it. So just imagine whatever product you have, jacket, vest, shirt, even underwear, and say, if some great pockets, really well-engineered pockets were added to this product, would it be better? And always the answer is yes. Pockets make everything better. We like to say it's not rocket science, it's pocket science. So
I seem to remember the first vests were pre-Bluetooth, and so they were also wired.
Yes, that is true. But the patent that was pitched on Shark Tank was a company called Technology Enabled Clothing, TEC, which owns the patent for the incorporation of wires in clothing, which the most obvious use is for your headsets, which even though Bluetooth is here, when you buy an iPhone, I believe they still come with wired headsets. Wired headsets are not dead by any means. They still are here, but the wiring has a number of other functions, including for power. You can have a device in one pocket and a battery in another pocket, and that's the intent of the patent. And another use that we'll get into later, based upon some of the questions that you have presented earlier in terms of what's in the future. So I went on Shark Tank several years ago. It's been a while now. It was season 3. And I couldn't pitch Scotty Vest because the producers took 5% of every company that stood on the stage, regardless of whether a deal was done or not. So having gone through the application process and got a copy of the contract and realized that option that they got, I pivoted and pitched Technology Enabled Clothing as a subsidiary company that I controlled all the revenues for. It became quite heated. For those of you who've seen the show, they wanted a piece of Scotty Vest, and they kept trying to bid on Scotty Vest. And I called Steve Wozniak, who's on my board of advisors, and made some great TV, and told them they were out and walked off the stage. So that's my elevator pitch and Shark Tank summary.
And if people go to YouTube, will they be able to find that?
It's a little hard, if you search Scotty Vest and because of ABC and the rights, the company that they may search as Technology Enabled Clothing. If they email me at scott@scottybest, I'll send them a private link and they can watch the episode. But if you watch it knowing what I've just told you, it'll make it a lot clearer, because they were just egging me on the entire time, and if I had merely uttered the word Scotty Vest, it would have cost me millions of dollars in valuation. So.
Well, I admire your self-control then, knowing what was at stake, and the fact that you caught that clause in the contract, and having been a recovering lawyer, you were able to know what to do with that information.
Yeah, it's since removed that clause as a result of my episode and the aftermath, because they realized that any company worth any significant value would not exchange that value for the privilege of being on stage for an edit that they couldn't control. So
right,
I'm glad they did that. They're making TV. They shouldn't get finder's fees. They're going to make up their mind what they want. Right,
exactly. Well, originally you were solving big problems for heavy travelers, right? In particular, and obviously travel's down a bit this year. So, what are some other niches that you're seeing a lot of heat with regards to interest from buyers outside of travel?
Well, that's a great question. I actually, when we first started, our niche was techies, and then I once asked my customers, how they use. I apologize for my various notifications popping in here, reminding me of this interview. But it was techies, people who had a lot of gadgets, and we asked our customers, for some pictures of themselves using the products, and all of them were on their wonderful trips. And we said to ourselves, as a company, maybe we're a travel clothing company. That's the highest and best use of our product. If you're sitting in your basement on your computer, you don't need lots of pockets. So travelers clearly need it. But in this post-pandemic or pandemic world, there are needs for it. You're carrying around, mask and gloves and disinfectant. Even when you're taking a trip to the grocery store, you want to have those things with you in addition to all the other items that you would have with you. We are discovering some other niches as well, road trippers and women, for example, who need pockets more than men, arguably, because, they want the option not to have to carry a purse. But we're about to announce a huge partnership with a type 1 diabetes charity, medical devices. These people have life or death devices that they carry with them that have insulin pumps and batteries associated and drugs associated with it that need to be kept at certain temperatures and the like. And they have been our customers for years. And one of the members of a large board, reached out to us, and we're a week or so away from making a huge announcement. So,
well, pre-congratulations on that. One thing I was impressed about the design that you came up with was that it could take a fair amount of weight and not lose its shape, right? And I imagine if you're going to be doing diabetes medical equipment or some of the other stuff, or larger tablets or larger phones went from being super small to super large, back and forth. They start out big, then they got super small, now they're big again. So
they're getting small again next week. Small
exactly.
and big.
But in the meantime, if they also want a tablet and a super small phone, it seems like you've engineered it in such a way that it can be fashionable, take the weight of the equipment and not lose its form. Which congrats to your engineering team for pulling that off.
Well, that was very difficult. The very first product we made, we didn't give any consideration. We were in such a rush to get to market to the weight management issues. And as a result, the bulk of the weight actually rested in the center of your back or neck, really, and it was extraordinarily painful. And, so that was a lesson that we learned, in ergonomics and engineering and consulting with chiropractors on, how to ensure that the weight is evenly balanced on your shoulders, even if you have more weight on one side than the other, and to hide the devices using a no bolts design, with the pocket. So despite if you're using Bluetooth and therefore don't need the conduit system for headphones or power, the other elements of the pockets, we think about pockets more than anyone else. So,
yeah. Well, I'm going to wait for your concealed carry version just for certain states.
Well, that's another use that we already do have. A lot of concealed CCW use cops, Secret Service, special ops. That is a use for our product. Anyone who's mobile and carrying around a number of things, whether you be a birder, a geocacher, a real estate agent that has keys and brochures, someone who goes to sporting events and can't bring a bag into the stadium. You're even going to Walt Disneyland or World and don't want to stand in the long line to have your bag examined. Trips to Africa where they limit how much weight. I mean, the uses are endless, as they like to say on TV. So, as I like.
Well, you mentioned a lot of use cases. Have you gotten like video testimonials from clients or other testimonials from clients that are spontaneous, or does your marketing team essentially go out and solicit them?
No, they're all spontaneous. Over 20 years, we were the first digitally native clothing company 20 years ago, to start as its primary distribution channel, the internet. So, over that period of time, and making a quality product that looks good and the like, we have more testimonials than we have usefulness to, and now we're recycling them because the testimonial that we had 10 years ago is just as valuable today. It's how we amplify that.
Right. And when did you start focusing as heavily on the women's side as the men's? Has the ratio of sales changed over the years?
Um, Yes, quite a bit. We came out with women's fairly early. We started in the year 2000, and I think our first women's product was a year or two into our product design. But what I quickly discovered, much to my shock and amazement, is that women have breasts. And they make making pockets very difficult because there's a huge area that you cannot put pockets on as readily as you could a man. So women's designs are challenging enough because their body shapes are a lot wider ranging than men's, but you add on the wonderful breasts, then it makes it even more complicated. But to answer your question, we started, with women's products early, but we didn't really focus on them until fairly recently when, my wife, Laura, got more, and president and co-founder, got more and more involved with those designs. And we have, I'd say, 35% of our sales are women's products, still overwhelmingly men, but, that's just due to, frankly, poor marketing. I would much prefer more women because it's an easier sale. You can say to them, you're wearing a dress, does it have pockets? And they would say, are you kidding? It's a dress, and the dresses don't have pockets. But they can, and they should have pockets, and ours do. It's an easier sale, and the women are the ones who get stuck carrying the items that their husbands have. That's how I started Scotty Best to begin with. I kept handing Laura, more and more things to carry, and she's like, "I'm not your personal Sherpa. Why don't you're looking for something to do rather than practice law? Why don't you design a better way to carry all your own stuff?" And
Right.
that was the big idea.
So obviously you have your own sort of epiphanies and new product ideas that you come up with or your wife comes up with, and then there's stuff that maybe comes in from your customers. How do you sort of decide which new line extensions to come out with and which product enhancements, how to prioritize that?
We're fortunate because our products are non-obsolete. We're not selling fashion. So, this shirt, for example, it's a Q-zip and it's got 3 pockets. It's been in the line for 10 years and unchanged.
Right.
Improvements to zippers, and we might update our logo here and there. So, I think initially we were anxious to keep adding to our array of styles. And now, we really feel like we've got a solid array of 80 or so different styles, in multiple colors and sizes for men and women, and hats and underwear and pants and shirts and just jackets with removable sleeves with and multiple versions of vests. So we're not looking to expand the clothing styles, at least during a pandemic. We're in survival mode, candidly, as you pointed out earlier, that we're perceived as travel clothing. So if you're not traveling, you really don't need a Scotty vest. When I say traveling, I use that word loosely. If you're hunkered down, quarantine yourself, you don't need it. But we are coming out in a week or so with the coolest gaiter/mask that you can possibly imagine. That we're excited to launch. Of course, it has a pocket for your Bluetooth headset or credit card or whatnot, and it packs into itself, and it's got a pocket for removable filters for your for the mask, and you can turn it slightly and have different levels of ventilation. And it's got a hole for a straw, and it, like I said, packs into itself, and it's really cool. So we're excited about that. When this whole pandemic started, my apparel manufacturer said, everyone's making a mask. You got to make a mask. I'm like, that's boring. I don't want to jump on that bandwagon. How can I innovate? And it was only after some time and thought and using my customers as on Zoom brainstorming sessions that we do together, was I able to come up with this great design. So it's a little of both, taking ideas that customers have. I got to be careful about that because, one case, customer said, who needs perfect pockets? doctors, you got to make a lab coat with pockets. So we made a lab coat. It made a lot of sense. And it was a really premium lab coat. We couldn't sell them. Our life depended on. We ultimately ended up giving them away. Another group of customers said, you got to do double zippers, the two-way zippers. And so we like, okay, anyone who should be doing the most technical zipper should be Scotty Vest. And we made those, and sure enough, customers have a tough time with a two-way zipper. And so we've sworn them off. But so most of the ideas come from us.
Interesting. So one thing that people might notice if they go to your LinkedIn profile is Margo, your dog, and your passion for her journey. And what can people learn from the Margo story?
Oh my God! Yay, Margo! Margaux. Yay is yay. And go. She has a website or Facebook page. It's much better. Margo. We have 4 standard poodles, and she was one of the 4 standard poodles. And at the age of 9, she got diagnosed with this really weird disease, and it just kept attacking bits and pieces of her body, and ultimately started focused on her eyes. And we had to take one of her eyes out, and we're like, okay, she's still got one eye, she can still see. And then shortly thereafter, we had to take her other eye out because it started attacking that eye. And then very shortly thereafter, we realized she was becoming fully deaf. So she's blind and deaf. And at that point, she was 11 years old. And we're thinking most people were saying, okay, she's suffering, put her down, and, it's enough, it's enough. And we said, no, we're going to keep this dog and give it the best life that she can have. We put ourselves in her position and said, we were blind and deaf, but we want to live. And we said, yeah, we would just sit there and eat. There's pleasure in eating. And so we decided to go well beyond eating and have her live her fullest life possible. She went all the hikes that we went on, 8-10-mile hikes. And even as she got much older, she still continued going on the hikes. And she's got this big can-do smile on her face. And she has this really, iconic tilt of her head that we think had something to do with her balance. But, it taught me to slow down, and give her the care and attention that she can to live life to her fullest. And as a result, we started writing with my wife a series of children's books, about what children can learn from that experience. And she was on Entertainment Tonight, and I went on road trips with her, and I'm walking around with her, and downtown Seattle and San Francisco, and it was a really incredible experience from what I've learned with her. And I've live streamed the experience, and long after she passed at 14, so it's a ripe age for a standard poodle. And long after she passed, people were still following along with her journeys, and her page exists to inspire others. So, we had little smell tablets throughout the whole house, and we, so she could smell her way around, and she would walk at night when everyone went to bed, all the younger dogs went to bed. She would map out the whole house and walk around, bumping the side of her head to things so she could know where things are. It was amazing. I'm so glad you did that research. So.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I looked into it, and it was clear that she was an inspiration to you, and therefore you were able to share that inspiration with others, which is a really fun story.
It made me a better person. It really did. It made me slow down and realize that if you can give that type of support to an animal, a person, that they will appreciate that, and they will give back, not just to me, but to an entire community of tens of thousands of people that follow her journey.
That was cool. So one of the things that popped into my mind that relates to sort of the manufacturing and invention of product was that in the early days of Chinese manufacturing, you always sort of like, oh, it's crappy, it's coming from China. And then if China, and Japan was sort of the premium, and then China upped its game, and China, you start to be able to get good stuff done in China. But when you're designing a product and collaborating with the factory and collaborating with the designers, as a business person, you have sort of a decision to make, of how robust to make your product, right? So I'd love to hear about how you went through the thought process of deciding, well, am I actually hurting myself if I make it so great that it never wears out, that like I can only ever sell it once, or do or do I try to make it a little bit obsolete after a few years? And sort of there's a continuum there, right? And you have to sort of pick your place, because it'll cost 30% more if you make it that much better, right? Or you could probably make it 20% cheaper and make it more crappy. So how did you go through that process?
It was never a decision for me. It was always make the highest quality product that I could make, regardless of price. I knew that I wanted to be in business 20 years later when I started. We actually started producing in South Korea, which was, sort of like Japan. It was higher quality than what people perceived China at the time, which is just a perception. My sense of China at the time when I first started, from all the articles you hear, it's like child labor and bad working conditions, and and some of that is true, but for the most part, it really isn't. It's any evolving society, starts with those sorts of things, and as they grow, they then make iPhones. But it is something that I've later been really resentful of, because technology, they introduce things in beta. And they say it's not ready, and the planned obsolescence. I'll bet you, I'd be surprised. I think it was only recently that Gmail went out of beta. And in their cases, they've got opportunities and budgets to test things, to say, when they deliver one version, that it's been tested and it works fine. And they have ways to deliver updates to it that would get it out of beta, pretty quickly, and have it working the moment, they realize there's something wrong with it. Even if it doesn't launch in beta, most of their designs are always considered an evolution, but yet they wait. And, iPhones in particular get buggy just about the time there's a new device coming out. So to me, it's a sign of pride when I see someone wearing one of my products that's 20 years old. We offer a 2-year warranty. Frankly, we could offer a lifetime warranty, because they last that long too. But if you're going to be putting a lot of weight in pockets and normal wear and tear, it's going to affect it. So it was never a concern or a question for me. I just, and I know that there are some lesser quality items out there, and they're not there for the long distance. So
Right.
We are, and have been, and I think it's paid off. But I do, when I see a customer wearing something that's 20 years old, or 10 years old, or even 5 years old, clothing is not meant to last forever. I mean, by its nature, it will fade. Zippers will wear, and for God's sake, replace it every 5-10 years for your own sake, because it's just a new piece of clothing is going to look better than an old. But this shirt is 8 years old, maybe older, and I only know from the basis of the logo, a different logo.
Right. Right. I'm sure some of your customers are probably asked, and it may be something that you think of occasionally, but what could the U.S. government do to convince you to move production, if anything, domestically?
They can't. They can't. The U.S. government can't, because there is not a workforce that's willing to sit in front of a sewing machine for 8 hours in a room with other sewing machines, and very, very carefully, given one of our products, 42 pockets. If a pocket is a ½ inch off, it's non-saleable. You can't fit a phone in it. It's non-saleable. There is not the workforce here to do it. There's not even the workforce in Mexico to do it. The industry does not exist for complicated garment. You can make T-shirts, you can make jeans, perhaps. There are companies that are making apparel here successfully, and hats off to them. American Giant, I'm not sure about Public Rec. Some great companies and great garments, but there is no one making complicated garments here, and it can't be done. And it's frustrating because that's a perception of customers. Oh, well, you're just greedy. You just want more profits. I couldn't make it for $1,000. You cannot do it. You can't just. It's hard enough to get someone to where I live and elsewhere to do this type of work. And it's just an evolving country that those jobs, no one wants to do those jobs.
Right, right. Well, let's shift gears to marketing. Are there any marketing channels that you think are overrated or underrated?
This is going to be the most interesting part of our conversation, I think, because, given your background in the marketing channels, we are the first, as I mentioned, digitally native clothing company, founded 20 years ago. And I'm embarrassed to say that we've discovered that we don't know how to digitally market 20 years later. And we're really learning how to do that. Now, you're going to say that's crazy. How is that possible? For the first 15 years, we got most of our business from PR, Shark Tank, and do a Google search on us. Every single major publication has written about us on multiple occasions. So we never once thought that we had to figure out how to acquire customers using digital channels in that fashion until now. So we have hired a multitude of marketing agencies over the years in an effort to help us, try to optimize search and a variety of other channels, Facebook and otherwise, and none of them have found any success. It's in search in particular. What do you search for when you didn't know it exists? Multi-pocket, it was a problem historically, but what I've learned through my recent exploration, it shouldn't be a problem now because it's intent-minded searching that can be useful. But multi-pocket clothing we own, travel vest we own, those travel clothing, it's a larger category, there are intent-minded searching that you can do now. Anyone searching TSA requirements, liquid requirements, they're about to make a trip. So you can get you can try to get in their stream for those searches. Searching Africa baggage requirements and restrictions. You can make some. You can get in front of people. For the most part, most of our marketing has been retargeting, and retargeting based upon our existing, 400,000 email list from customers, over, the course of 20 years and like. It wasn't until several years ago when I saw Untuck It do a TV commercial on this wonderful invention of, drumroll please, shirts designed to be untucked. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. If they're on TV convincing people that they've got an interesting product, we can clearly, convince people of the uniqueness of our product. And as a result, we went on TV, skipped over all the digital methods, and found real success growing our business on TV for a year and a half or so until we didn't. For reasons that are lengthy, we hired a fancy creative agency who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars renting airplanes and airfields to design a commercial that only aired twice because it didn't produce, and agencies competing for claiming credit for the sale when it wasn't theirs, and so we're now going back on TV yet again with an agency we're really excited with. Just hired a digital agency that I'm really excited to start working with. in the, just in time for Q4. And we're going to really, attack the Facebook top of funnel, places, and the Google and YouTube top of funnel. So check with me in a month or so, and hopefully I'll have some information for you.
I might do that. I mean, a lot of CMOs really see Google, particularly search within Google, as demand harvesting, right? Because by the time the person raises their hand, they have a bunch of intent. And maybe that's intent that you still have to transform into product intent, like you said, with the TSA water related searches. But it's still some kind of a stimulus where the search is particularly open to learning about stuff. And, when you've got PR or different other forms of earned media, that's where you can actually do the top of funnel. And it's expensive once you move away from earned media, which is technically free, but actually very expensive. And then obviously you can be harvesting as much demand as you can get your hands on. But a lot of CMOs look at that bottom of the funnel as the Google tax, right? Like basically Google's getting in the way of almost every sale, right? Because whether it's a brand search or whether it's a brand related search, the CMOs start to get exasperated, and they're saying sort of, do I really have to pay the Google tax on every sale? Should I advertise on my brand?
I felt that way when I originally did start buying my brand keyword, and was told that you don't buy your brand keyword, someone else will. So, and getting them closer to a purchase. A purchase page and directing them, but it is a tax, and they do have a monopoly, Google in particular, and Facebook as well. But I feel I'm super excited because we've come up with some amazing creative using X-ray imagery, using the expression more better pockets, pocket science. I've been studying, as I'm a Facebook addict, between my live streaming and Margo and just general, just obsession with the platform. I feel that there's real opportunity there, but I didn't fully understand how much patience was needed to understand the customer journey on a typical Facebook, purchase. You see it. I've never bought something on Facebook on my first view. I see it. It takes several times. It takes a friend to suggest it to me, and we've never done any SEO work at all. Again, what do you search for when you didn't know it existed? So check back.
Yeah. Well, content marketing and SEO and social are much more interwoven than they ever were before. And to your point about buying your brand keywords, every time we've ever done either a longitudinal test or any other form of test, having access to the PPC site links and controlling the user experience and the user messaging, it's nearly always ROI positive to buy your brand, especially if a competitor could buy your brand, which in some cases they can. So it seems like you guys arrived at pretty much the same result, the same conclusion in your testing.
Yes.
So I look forward to seeing the new products come out, especially it seems like we'll probably be using masks longer than anybody would want. So your timing.
Well, and ours is designed for a post-pandemic world. It's a gaiter. It's for smoke, from the fires. If you're on a dirt bike and you don't want to eat the dust of the people in front of you. If you're skiing, and you want to keep yourself a little warm. I mean, so we weren't crazy about just a mask solely for the pandemic. It goes well beyond that.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for sharing all your wisdom, and look forward to catching up with you once you've had a chance to, dive back into digital marketing again.
I'd love that. Thanks a lot for having me, Kevin. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.